And we're live. What's up, everybody? This is a new type of stream. We are doing a Twitter space right now. I know technically it's an X space, but I don't know if I'm being stubborn, but it's just a dumb name. So I'm sticking to Twitter. I'll probably get to it. Yeah, right? Open dialogue. Hold on one second. I'm just editing something and then we'll be fully there. All right, let's share screen so Twitter can see, so YouTube can see what's up. Cool. Awesome. Welcome, everybody. See, we got a nice crew here. I'm sure it'll grow as the evening progresses. Let me make sure. Okay, cool. We're good. Okay, so this is the first ever open dialogue Twitter space I've run. We'll see how it goes. If it's successful, this will be an every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Jerusalem time occurrence. And if it doesn't go well, hey, we tried. So the concept here is just free-flowing dialogue. Anybody's welcome to chime in, share thoughts, ask questions. I would say the only rule is act in good faith, keep it respectful, and I imagine this will be a very fruitful conversation. So to all those joining in, welcome. Alessandra, good to see you here. I'm guessing you're back in Italy. Alessandra's a friend I got to meet in Jerusalem a few weeks ago, so cool to see. I think there's friends you meet first on Twitter or online, and then you meet them in real life, and then there's friends that you meet in the real world, and then they become online friends. So that was our process. George, I see we have you here as well. What's up, George?
Hi, great to be here. Thanks for setting this up.
Yeah, for sure. So we have some news today. There was an assassination attempt, and perhaps not an attempt at all, perhaps a success, but it seems like it's not yet being reported if it was successful. I am seeing word that Khalid Mashal, who is the official leader of Hamas now, was not killed, but we are seeing here primary sources elimination of Khalil al-Haya, Hussam Badran, Tahir al-Nono, and Ali Darwish. So there are some reports that it was successful, but I'm seeing conflicting reports. So unclear at this point if it was successful. What are the implications, though? It's interesting. It's first of all, the Qatar has been facilitating the ceasefires. So I think it, on one level, speaks to Israel's interest in really negotiating a ceasefire. Qatar has announced that they will no longer be facilitating it, which, there's other countries, there's Egypt, there's Turkey that may be willing, but, this doesn't seem to be a good faith effort to negotiate a ceasefire, which I think is probably not surprising to many people. On the other hand, if I want to be charitable, I think if Israel were to just engage in a primarily assassination strategy and not a mass destruction of Gaza strategy, I think it would be a lot easier for people to accept that as a strategy. So I think you could look at it both ways. Like I'm less mad about an assassination attempt in Qatar than I am the destruction of Gaza with the civilian population inside.
I mean, I think that like it's difficult to say whether or not this is even like a necessary.
Yeah, you think that's obvious?
Plan thing with the stupid AI image.
What was that?
Do you know about this? They said like there's this like plan for Gaza, and they put out like this big paragraph, and it's like some AI image of like a big river.
Oh yeah, like the Gaza Riviera plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's dumb. I mean, look, I think you're right that Israel would very much like to defeat Hamas, but wanting to and actually doing so is two very different things because they still can maintain. I mean, you never know how it's going to play out, right? They could eventually decide to surrender and disarm, but if they wanted to, they could maintain it in armed insurgency for years. It's not so simple to just remove them from power. If Israel wanted to, they could maintain full control over all of Gaza and start providing civil services, which they don't want to do. That's why the military, one of the reasons why the IDF is objecting to taking over Gaza City, because you have around 1 million people living there, and the IDF doesn't want to be responsible for providing for them. But in a situation where to defeat Hamas means Israel needs to hold Gaza, it means they need to rule over the people there. And it will allow Hamas and other militant groups to maintain a deadly insurgency, which will be costly for Israel. And it's unclear how much patience Israel would have for that, how long the public would accept that. The public currently is already not in support of continuing this operation. So I agree with you that Israel doesn't seem like they're going to stop anytime soon, and the U.S. won't make them. But that doesn't mean Hamas will just be defeated. If they don't surrender, they can fight for many more years, effectively.
I just don't know like what Hamas fighting looks like, right? Because there have been several Palestinian organizations since like the 60s and 70s that just, I mean, technically they exist, but like, do they, right?
You mean like the PFLP, for example?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they probably have a small number of people, but it's that's a little bit different. Hamas has like a massive tunnel city under Gaza. We haven't dismantled the tunnels, and it's beyond Hamas. If there's a long-term occupation, then you're going to have some number of Gazans just decide to take up arms, whether it's clans or other militant groups, Islamic Jihad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be clean, and I mean, it's just the issue is like since like Likud are in power, I feel like there's probably like a 0 chance of the PA taking over, and I don't even know if the Palestinians would want that in Gaza.
Yeah, at this point, they'd prefer the PA, but it seems like the majority don't want neither the PA nor Hamas. I think the most popular choice is some kind of an international coalition of Arab states.
Do you think Saudi Arabia would like be okay with being involved in that?
Maybe if they get paid enough money, I think everyone has a price, so perhaps, but. And I even think there's a deal on the table that will have a coalition of different Arab states, including Saudi Arabia, that will provide some kind of governance and security. I think that deal is on the table. What Hamas has agreed to is to step down from political power, but they're refusing to disarm. So they would like to function more like Hezbollah, where they're just militant group functioning within Lebanon. So I think Hamas would like to do that within Gaza. It's easier for them, needing to deal with politics is probably not something they're so interested in. But it's also one of the narratives we hear that I think is it's a false narrative. So at the beginning, there's this narrative, release the hostages and this all ends. And that was not really connected to reality because Israel, it's not just the hostages. Israel would like to remove Hamas from power. So that was the first false narrative. And people have kind of gotten over that. They've understood that that's not the right claim to make because Netanyahu explicitly is saying that that's not what he's looking for. So now the new narrative is release the hostages and surrender, which is essentially stepping down from power and disarming.
Sure.
But it's not even clear that that ends it. So let's think this through. Let's say Hamas disarms, maybe they get exiled. Who then controls Gaza? If Israel withdraws, then it's a power vacuum, and the Islamic Jihad will take over, and maybe some clans will take over some areas, some of the pockets that they have control over. Right, the next most powerful, which is the Islamic Jihad, will take over. If Israel stays, then it's not over. Right, that doesn't end it. There will be some number of Gazans taking up arms against Israel, so Israel will, in their very risk-averse fashion, continue to operate there, operating in a way that inflicts harm on the civilian population. So it's the whole surrender and it's over. To me, that doesn't make sense unless Israel's coming with a very clear, coherent, well-established day-after plan, saying Hamas surrenders and then these forces come in and do governance and over time build a Palestinian governance system. Right? But there's
and I agree with you, and actually that's like kind of one of my biggest criticisms with from October 8th to now is like it seems like there just hasn't been a long-term plan this whole time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there's an interesting debate over that. If you hear John Spencer, he would like to make killing people as easy as possible with as little accountability as possible. That seems to be his MO, at least killing people if you're a Western nation, But he's pushed back. He said the expectation that Israel has a day after plan is not something that we should expect. You deal with that later. Right now, they need to defeat Hamas, and then we could deal with the day after plan. But I think there's a major problem with that thinking because, and maybe I'll zoom out and just like explain how I look at war in general. I think we should accept that war should always be the last resort because war involves generally the mass killing of civilians, right? The mass killing of civilians is essentially human beings who have their inalienable right to life taken from them. Now, this is something that we in society agree is something very bad when somebody is killed. We respect people's right to life to such a great degree that there's debate in Western society of if you could take someone's life if they're a murderer, right? The debate over capital punishment. But then when it comes to war, suddenly we have this category of collateral damage and we become cold and callous. It's like, oh yeah, it's just collateral damage. If civilians die, they die. I think part of us making moral progress as a species is to evolve beyond that way of thinking and understand that war is inherently horrible. There's an inherent evil to war. So if you're going to engage, if you're going to wage war, if you're going to kill civilians, you need to prove that you don't have better alternatives. B, you need to do everything in your power to reduce civilian harm. And C, and I think this is especially relevant in Israel's case, you need to prove that you actually have a plan. Because just waging war with no plan means we know for certain war is mass killing of civilians, but if you're not creating a better future, then how can you in any way justify doing that to civilian population? And when it comes to Israel, we have pretty good data on what Israel does in areas where there is no Hamas. You have the West Bank. The West Bank has been under brutal military occupation for over 50 years. Hamas is not in power there. You have a relatively moderate government in power that recognized Israel's right to exist in 1993 and has had security cooperation with Israel for decades now. And what do they have to show for? How is the PA rewarded for their moderate stance? Expansion of settlements, more loss of land, and a more oppressive system. So let's say Israel defeats Hamas. Will that create a utopian Gaza, or will you have another military occupation?
Well,
and just an unsustainable system like we see in the West Bank. So,
I think I'd like to push back on like probably two things there.
Sure, yeah.
So, I think that recent events, unrelated to Israel-Palestine, have sort of revealed to me that sometimes war is much more preferable to an unjust peace. So, for instance, if a country wanted to go to war with whatever country you live in, and you were saying, wait, no, let's avoid war, and they're like, okay, my condition is we take half your country, you probably wouldn't say that's a just resolution.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So even a war that kills, I don't know, a 20th of your population, like even if they're civilians, I would say that's worth it in the long term because, well, you still have your sovereign country.
Right, correct. That's why the first factor that I mentioned, that I said we should take into consideration, is what are your alternative options? If there's a way to if there's a way to negotiate out of that situation without war, then that's preferred. And if it comes down to a situation where you need to wage war in order to not lose sovereignty, I think nations and collectives have the right to do that. But I think so. I agree. I agree with you to a large extent, but it should always be seen as a last resort, right? This is probably a similar logic to how Hamas and Palestinians who take up arms against Israel view it. They say, I'd rather have war than an unjust peace. You know, you took most of my land, and now you say let's have peace. Right after you took most of my land, now you want peace? No, that's not just, right? So they resist it. So I definitely
I
understand.
agree with that, but to be fair, I think that also goes the other way too. Whenever Palestinians demand like 47 borders or something like that, I know the usual line is 67, but I've heard 47 as well, and I think that's quite frankly ridiculous.
Oh yeah. Some are asking for that, and I mean, some are asking for even more, right? There's, I'd say you probably have a few different levels.
More than a few.
47, and no Israel whatsoever.
Yeah.
And what's unfortunate is, I'm much more charitable and understanding when oppressed and traumatized people somehow have radical views, whether it's Israelis or Palestinians. We're two very traumatized and radicalized populations. So when I see the extremism, and the extremism is very much represented in data, but I don't think we should be demonizing our populations. I think we should understand that these are conditions that lead people to extreme views. So I get it, and I'm understanding of the extreme views of Israelis and Palestinians. But when I see these Westerners that have not been traumatized by the conflict, but they're just fanning the flames of radicalization by saying, by calling for the ethnic cleansing of one side or the other, I'm much less charitable to those views, because the expectation should be, at the very least, if you're coming more from a place of privilege and you didn't grow up under military occupation or being victimized by terror, at the very least be a voice of reason and try to promote moderate stances rather than just fanning the flames of radicalization. So
yeah, I mean, I actually 100% agree with that. I think that unfortunately, one of the worst things that has come out of this conflict in terms of dialogue is there's like this huge Eurocentric view of it in the West, where people are constantly demanding peace, but they don't know what the cost of that is. They don't know what that means.
Could you elaborate? So what do you think the cost of peace is that that Westerners are missing? I would actually think it's more so they're calling for more bloodshed and they don't pay the cost of it. So
Well, it'll depend, right? So like I think okay, this is hard to explain. There are people who like fence it in the middle, who just say like, oh hey, there should be peace, right? And that's it. And they don't like really understand what either side's like wants, because neither side like necessarily wants peace, right? They want what they think is justice.
Yeah, peace on our terms. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think some people are raising their hands to talk though.
Yeah, yeah. We'll let some people chime in. Emrose, is that? I only see the emoji, but I believe Emrose is your name, right? Yeah, Emrose. Floor's yours.
Hi, Adar. How are you?
I'm
It's
good.
nice to see you opening spaces.
Yeah,
Um,
first, but I think I'll do it more.
so
I know you do this a lot too, so maybe we could collab sometime.
I'm free anytime. Would be happy to.
Cool.
I think it starts with the question of what do you mean by peace? And I think it's also important to emphasize words matter. It's not a conflict, it's an occupation, right? So it's important in order to frame the conversation to use the right terminology. And peace I don't think that can be an actual aspiration right now. That is a long, long, long way down the road. We are hopefully soon post genocide. This is a different paradigm that we're talking about since before October 7th. And somebody said, I think, Astral, the word justice. I think we should start with that. Without justice, there will never be any type of peace or coexistence. It has to start with accountability and justice.
Well, can I chime in on that the peace thing there?
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. So I do believe peace can exist because under under Begin and what's his face?
Can you
Uh,
start by defining what you mean by peace?
yeah, I mean, I think there's like a clear delineation between like what you might call like a warm peace and a cold peace. So I would say like Canada and the United States have like a warm peace where it's a good relationship and there's open trade and dialogue and the leaders meet and they talk nice. And then there's sort of like what Egypt and Jordan have with Israel, which is what I would call a cold peace, where they don't fight, and it's pretty clear that they will like protect each other in like a military sense, but they're not friends.
So I think, if I may, that this is part of the problem maybe that people don't understand. That applies when we're talking about two sovereign established nations. But
Mhm.
if you ask most Israelis about what is a two-state solution, which I'm clearly not for, but I can accept if as a step along the way, in the mindset of Israelis, that still includes some format of control by Israel. Be it even like Yair Golan likes to say, we need to give back 99% of the West Bank, but we also need to have 99% security control. Part of the problem with Israel is that they cannot compute the idea that they cannot have a say in what happens at the other side. It's not theirs to decide, which is part of the concept of self-determination. People get to determine their own fate. So this is why the entire conversation, the way we've known it till now, has to completely change, in my opinion, respectfully.
Yeah, I mean, uh, okay, so this is obviously not like a one-to-one, so don't go like swinging out here like, oh my God, the Palestinians aren't Nazis or whatever. But you know, Nazis were not allowed to hold political power in Germany post World War II.
To be
And
clear, in this equation, Israel is the Nazi, not the Palestinian.
I know, just separate like what actually is, and let's just speak about the occupation. Like the occupation of Japan required that government to completely disarm, and the occupier was in charge of security. Same thing with Germany. I mean, it is what it is. I don't know how you avoid that.
You avoid that because that's the concept of ending the occupation. Part of the problem is that even now, when it comes to Gaza, the Palestinians do not have the right to self-determination. They have done nothing to justify people making decisions for them, determining their own fate. They have been occupied from day one. So this is not an equivalent to Nazi Germany or Japan. This is a people that have never had the right to determine their own fate and should be given the right to determine their own fate, which means nobody gets to intervene at who their leaders are, what happens inside their borders. If they become a hostile state, then you fight a hostile state. But the idea of two states, even though, again, I oppose it because I am pro one democratic state, um, still has to start with Israel not accepting the idea that they cannot have a say in what happens. That's it. He's always here. He's much better than me.
We're gonna give it Thank you both. We're going to keep it.
Also, George has his hand up.
Yeah, we're going to give it over to
Oh.
George and then Michael and then Stephen. And whoever's already a speaker, just feel free to stick around. I'd like to keep this as free-flowing as possible. If it gets hectic, then we'll keep it super organized. But George, all you.
Thanks. Thanks again for setting this up. So, war, war is always the result of economic ignorance, right? There's always some kind of fallacy. It's never a good idea to have millions of people attack others and kill each other, right? So that's always the result of some kind of fallacy. And it's up for those of us, to try to discover what the fallacies are and to have sympathy and hopefully persuade people so that these fallacies, don't come about. So, so I just wanted to throw that in there. And also, I am very much against all this talk about justice and that kind of stuff. This is way too complex to say that the Zionists are the bad guys or that the Palestinians are the bad guys and that kind of stuff. Adar knows very well how traumatized the Zionists are, and rightly so, right? They have to deal with the Nazis. There is a lot of anti-Semitism. Exactly. Well, okay, so I disagree, and we can talk about that at some other time. So I just wanted to make that point. Something else, once again, I want to bring, again, all of this comes down to intellectual errors. This idea that we're going to say that either side is either maliciously evil or that they're stupid, it's just one gigantic fallacy. Unfortunately, 90% of political dialogue always comes down to that. I just want to mention a brief quote from the great economist Ludwig von Mises. He says, "It is ideas that group men into fighting factions that press the weapons into their hands and that determine against whom and for whom the weapons shall be used. It is they alone and not arms that, in the last analysis, turn the scales." So we really want to have sympathy, focus on the errors, and hopefully come up towards some future. And the final thing I want to mention, Adar earlier was saying that, we need to have some kind of prosperity and so on. So that brings me to the final important point I want to make. I want to bring attention that we are also joined in this Twitter space by my friend, Professor David Beito. And he is one of the few people that I am aware of that has taken the time to actually write some kind of article, okay, that really provides some kind of solution to this mess. He wrote an article that is called "A Way Out of the Israel-Palestine Conflict, a Swiss-style canton system." So I just wanted to bring that up because, I hope maybe at some point, maybe he can talk for 5 minutes or so he can talk a little bit about, writing that article and so on. And that's it. I'll just bring it back to you guys. Thanks, Adar.
Thanks, George. Emrose,
I
did you
think
want?
Zara had his hand up. Adar, I can let him go before me, and I'll go after.
Who's that? I think Michael.
Zara?
Yeah, but we have Michael.
Right, don't worry about it.
And
Michael
then,
and Stephen.
Zohar, we'll get to you, but good to see you here, man. Was Stephen first?
No, it was Michael and then Stephen.
All right, Michael, all you, man.
All right. First of all, thank you for having me here. I've been someone who's been interested in this for a long time. I can just mention, I'm not from Israel or Palestine. I'm an American, but I have a lot of connections with this conflict. I have a friend who's a Palestinian American friend. I've taken a course when I was in university studying the conflict. I've had a lot of interactions with Israelis. I think a big part of the reason why this is such a tense then is because people don't just disagree on opinions and viewpoints. They disagree on fundamental facts on the ground. There is just a very, very strong 100% disagreement on what the actual facts of the conflict are, which causes such an impasse and causes a lot of positions to become incompatible, I think. I've seen lots of people on the Israeli side and Palestinian side both argue that this land is our land. It belongs to us, all of it, from the river to the sea. It all belongs to Israel, or it all belongs to Palestine. I've seen people feel that both sides are the thieves. Obviously, those on the Palestinian side feel that the Israelis stole the land from them. The Israelis disagree, saying, no, we did not steal that. You're the ones stealing this land from us, actually. I think that's actually a big part of the impasse, is when there's disagreement on the facts and there's disagreement on, it causes people to take incompatible positions. And that's part of the reason why we are in such a situation we are. I remember, I obviously both claim the land belongs to them then. And I remember studying the war in 1948, that when the war began then, the Israelis argued they were justified because the Palestinians were not respecting their borders. So why do we need to respect your borders, kind of thing? And that seems to be a major justification for the Israeli position. Whereas the Palestinians, of course, feel that it belonged to them. They had no right to, lose any land. So they were under no obligation to respect Israel's borders when they were illegitimate. So that honestly just comes to mind, Ben, is when you have incompatible positions like this. Like both of them believe that either God or Allah gave this land to them. Both of them claim to be the indigenous people of the land, the true indigenous people of the land. Both of them claim that the other side is unwilling to, meet them in the middle or come up with what they consider a compromise. It really is, I think, a big part of the impasse.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Okay, thank you.
I agree. There's almost two ways to look at it, right? One is a very big ideological gap that is connected to just the story we tell, right? How the other is the villain in our story, right? We're this population that is good and virtuous, and we're fighting evil. So we both see each other as the villain. That's more so just a massive difference in narrative, and the other is just facts. We can't even agree on what is real and what's not. And we see that when in Gaza, the misinformation when it comes to Gaza, it's just all over the map. And it's, and it's not even, most misinformation that's shared is not even intentional. It's just people not knowing who they could trust. So they're more inclined to trust people sharing things that are in line with their belief. And then they contribute to the propagation of misinformation. But it's, I don't quite know what the solution to that is. Perhaps there's some AI solution, but we gotta find a way to figure out what's true and what's not, for sure. With that, we'll give it over to Stephen. Stephen, you just need to unmute yourself.
Is that better?
Yep, we hear
Can
you.
you hear me now? Great. Okay. Yeah. So first of all, thank you, Adar, and I agree with what Mike was saying. I do have one question for you, Adar, directly before I go on, because maybe I misunderstood. I thought it was like the idea of this group was to bring together Israelis and Palestinians. It seems like we just have I don't know if we have any Palestinians in this group. At least I can't see any here. Was that the general idea, or was it just to have a dialogue about the Israel-Palestine conflict?
That's a good question. I initially announced this as a dialogue between Israelis and Palestinians, and then I published it in a few different platforms, and I got a fair bit of Israelis sign up, a fair bit of internationals sign up, and maybe one Palestinian. So then I understood. Right. I think the dialogue is essential, but it would require a little bit more work for me to actually do outreach and recruit the right balance of Israelis and Palestinians. So I just don't. I right now don't have time to put that together, but that still is an intention to set up not just one, but many different Israeli-Palestinian dialogue groups. But in the meantime, because I saw that there's interest, I said, you know what? So let's get the group going. Anyways, we'll run it on Twitter Spaces and we'll see what happens. So here we are.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, I do live in Israel. I do have contact with Palestinians. I've spent time in the West Bank, and I do know that it's hard. I mean, because I've tried to work. There was one woman I was trying to work. We were trying to do like a project that would be like teaching the conflicting narratives online, and we had a whole conversation about the anti-normalization movement. And this was someone who her father was in the Palestinian National Council, and she got cold feet, because I think it is very hard. And I've been with Palestinians to Europe in a dialogue thing, and they're very, they're willing to talk, but they're also not. They don't want to be have their names appear in the press because they can be punished for it. And I have a friend who spoke for Combatants for Peace in England, and he came back and he was suspended. He worked at a high school, and he got suspended from his job for 6 months without pay as punishment for representing combatants for peace. So
I have
it
a
is.
question
But
for Stephen, if that's okay.
yeah. Let's go.
If you feel really do not answer this if you don't feel comfortable, but like vaguely, like where do you live in Israel?
I live between the airport and Jerusalem, so close enough to the airport that every time the Houthis were targeting the airport, we were in our safe room. I'm in my safe room now.
Every Israeli knows where you live right now.
Have you been to the West Bank?
Yeah. In fact, I was in the West Bank just a few weeks ago, and I visited. I went with I was on a special tour with Peace Now, and we went to. It was a very eye-opening experience. I mean, even for someone like me with my political viewpoints to begin with, but even so, it's just strange that like you have. Like we wanted to go into a settlement, and there was someone there at the entrance there, and the Peace Now representative had to hide in the bus because if he saw her, he would like tell, no, you can't go through. Like even though we're like all Jews. And then we visited. We went through we saw some of the farms. We saw there's a lot of abandoned Bedouin encampments, and we saw abandoned Bedouin encampments. We saw Jews who were farming in the areas of the abandoned Bedouin encampments. We went to Uja, and we were in Uja actually, and that was very interesting because there are these internationals who volunteer, and they stay with the Bedouins to try to protect them. And I actually
It's called protective presence. It's
no, not protective presence. It's a different group because it had like a longer name. If you want, whatever. If you tell me, I can find. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but it was a longer acronym. It doesn't matter anyway. So yeah, they were doing the protective presence. I actually participated in the protective presence, and we went to an area and we were with spent the day with a shepherd, whatever. And that like we saw settlers, but no one did anything. Maybe because we were there, I don't know. But it was fine. But then I came back. That was just before October 7th. When I went to the area there, I mean, he's gone. But in Uja, we were there actually the morning after settlers had come in and poisoned some of their goats. Like you saw, like 4 or 5 of them were just lying down and dead with their like guts spilled out. It was pretty horrific.
Jesus Christ!
And I asked them. Because these. I asked the volunteer. They said, "Well, don't you put cameras up there?" They said, "Yeah, we had cameras, but the settlers destroyed them over the weekend, and we ordered a technician to come in, and he's coming this afternoon to fix the security cameras." But what they did have so they couldn't catch the actual act. But what they did was that they did with their cameras, they caught a couple of the settlers. And what they do is that there's this one guy. I took notes, but the name slips my mind. But what he does is that he hired. They also, because it was the summertime, they were particularly active. They take a lot of these kids. There's a lot of like youth at risk, and in Israel, what we do is we have these things called youth villages, and if you're like a youth at risk, you go there, and some of them are religious. So he recruits these kids who are youth at risk. They don't really have functioning family lives. And then he gives them something to do, and he makes them feel like they have meaning in their lives, and they go around. And so he has them go and they harass the Palestinians in the area. We saw that. We went to Taiba, which is where it's like the one Christian village in like the northern West Bank, where they make the Taiba beer. And we spoke to we got a tour of the factory. We talked to the women who worked there. We also saw around the village. I mean, there's this thing called Tag Mechir, which is like this price tag thing. They go around and they vandalize things. So we saw where they they set all kinds of things on fire. They set cars on fire. They burned down some of the vegetation, and then they left a message behind. They wrote in Hebrew, to the army, "Where's my 6 months?" And it's a reference to the fact that that the government passed this law that, like, anyone who wears a mask, is like automatically gets 6 months. The settlers know they can wear around go mask. They can attack Palestinian areas. They're not going to get their 6 months. So they're like taunting simultaneously the Palestinians and the Israeli authorities to basically say, we can do what we want. So yeah, I mean, I can understand that for a lot of Palestinians. And when I was talking to the woman from Taiba, so what had happened just not long before.
Yo,
that,
really quick, Stephen.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, very quickly is that settlers they destroyed the water, the water pumping station, which meant that they cut down their water, and so they're just they can't. They're saving all their water as much as they can to try to keep the business alive. They can't water their plants and things like that. What I feel is like with Palestinians, they're so busy just trying to hang on to life. It's really hard for them to think about dialogue. And the last thing I just want to add, I teach a course on this online, so I could go on forever about the history of the conflict, but I'll leave it here because I think we really need to think forward about, we have our conflicting narratives, but we have to think about what is a future. And I agree, you're not going to get justice, but the least what you can strive for is to reduce harm. And I think that's where we need to focus. Thanks.
Thank you
Thank you, Stephen. I think Zoa was next.
Yeah, it's going to go Zohav, Liquid, David, and then we're going to give it. Okay, it looks like that's it. Someone unraised. So Zohav, all you.
Thank you. Hi, Rose. How's it been?
I missed you.
Sorry, I was having a life for some time. On to the topic. I want to address what George just said earlier about good versus bad. It's not the Israelis that are bad and not the Palestinians that are bad. We just listened to Stephen's testimony of his experiences. There are people who are bad. I mean, not like inherently, but it's not Israelis versus Palestinians, but within Israel, like with every country, there is a group of people with a radical ideology that are driving some of the aggression that the state inflicts upon other people, whether it's the Hilltop Boys or illegal settlements or other radical voices. When we talk about America invading Iraq, we don't say the Americans hate the Iraqis. We say there are neoconservatives that were pushing for it in order to advance their interests. Similar things are happening in Israel as well. Israelis are battling against fascist, radical, religious voices that do not care neither for Israel's rules or the United Nations rules or any of the conventional agreements that we have of how we should run society. And unfortunately, Israel is currently being governed by one of the most corrupt and horrible leaders that Israelis had. I mean, the situation is a lot more complex than that, of course, but within Israel, I'm trying to say it's not a monolith that is fighting against and thinking that they have a right for all of the West Bank. There are certain elements within Israeli society that think this way, and unfortunately, they get disproportionate power across all of Israeli authorities, which eventually create this mess. So if anything, we need to try to identify what segments of Israeli society do consider an alternative option and are not willing to send people to die in order to conquer more land in the West Bank, etc.
Really quick, Zohar, do you live in Israel?
No, not anymore.
Okay. Do you mind saying, are you from there?
Yeah, born and raised. I left Israel at the age of 21.
Okay. One thing I'm kind of curious about now that you mentioned that is, I know that Netanyahu holds his coalition government right now, and that's why he's in power. Do you think that Israel would benefit from leaning into a two-party system?
Leaning as in comparison to the multi-party system that we have?
Yeah.
I'm not too sure that limiting democracy further, it's what Israel needs at the moment. Israeli demographics or its electorate, as it seems right now, it's incapable of actually producing any kind of viable coalition that can direct the country on a different path. It is sad, but this is the situation we are in right now.
Mm-hmm. It just seems like that, like sometimes, like the Likud rhetoric is like heavier
But
into like
Astral,
RZP
just
stuff than it usually needs to
I
be.
know Astral. I just know that David has been waiting for a while.
Mhm.
So how about we do a little 2 more minutes of ping pong and then we can pass it on, just to be respectful.
Yeah, I mean that's fine. Yeah, of course, David.
Hey, can everyone hear me?
Loud and
Yeah,
Mhm.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
great. I'm a history professor at the University of Alabama, and I wrote an article a couple years ago, thinking about what is the solution. And we're going to. I'm happy to say that I'm going to be debating at the Soho Forum, perhaps with Alan Dershowitz, in December about this. And basically, the article proposes a system that has been proposed for many years by people in Israel and Palestine before that, and even debated at the UN after World War II. And this is for a one-state solution, but a federal solution, a canton solution, modeled after Switzerland. And there is a group in Israel pushing systems like this called the Federal Forum. If any of you Google Federal Forum Israel, it is a group in Israel, which is a coalition of Palestinians, Jews. It's got Christian members. I think it even has some Druze members. And basically, the idea is divide up Israel and Palestine into about 30 self-governing cantons. And it's a good off-ramp for Zionists because in Switzerland, you have cantons with their own official churches. So you could imagine sort of mini Jewish states, all in the context of one person, one vote. People have been talking about solutions, and I will say this is sort of related to this. Why isn't there more interest in the South African and American strategy, civil rights strategy of one person, one vote? Because two states is not viable, I think. We have a de facto one state, and that state is Israel. So, what about a movement demanding one person, one vote within Israel? If such a movement arose, you might get discussion about possible off ramps like a canton solution. So I'm just wondering why that isn't happening, because that is the model
Because
that was
David,
successfully
but David,
pursued by
right
the
now,
American Civil Rights Movement.
yeah, but David, the Israeli government passed legislation stating about 6 months ago that there will be no Palestinian state. So the entire concept of even going towards an actual democracy, one man, one vote, is so out of the realm of possibilities. It's
No, I'm talking about what we did in the United States. You had a civil rights movement in Mississippi. Most blacks were disfranchised. They didn't demand getting rid of the flag, of Mississippi flag, or ending the state and creating a new one. They demanded the vote within that state. You already have 20% of Israelis citizens are Arabs who vote and have voted for decades. Now that's not a perfect system,
okay,
but it is
but
a model. Why can't other Palestinians just people
If I
try to
may.
say they
no,
should
yes,
have the
please.
vote like those people have the vote within Israel? Don't bother about a second state. Demand it within Israel.
Okay,
David, if I may for a second, I will first state that I am a big fan of the federation model. I've been sitting on a lot of seminars with Yosef Avishar, who has a confederation model in mind, and the Gar people and others. This is a wonderful utopia to consider, and I wish we'll one day make it to that point. Unfortunately, those how can I say them, not so kind elements within Israeli society and government, they are not willing to consider sharing the land with non-Jews. They established in 2018 the nation-state law that Israel is only the land of Jewish people, from the river to the sea. It's not a question of allowing for a Palestinian state, but it's just necessary to maintain the Jewish majority. Now, as it is right now, between the river and the sea, the population is balanced with 7 million Jews and 7 million Palestinians. those who are very much worried about Jewish people having a majority are not willing to accept any kind of a solution that would risk this demographic majority.
That's why you need a movement that succeeded, like in the United States and South Africa, saying, demanding one person, one vote from the ground up.
But
I'm
David,
just
that's
wondering
the
why
point.
hasn't such a movement arisen? That
Because
would
David,
seem
when you
to go
said
directly to the heart of the matter.
but when you said that you don't have to change the flag, et cetera, that's exactly the point of not having a Jewish majority. It most likely will not be called Israel, which is fine. It most likely will not have a Star of David on its flag or the anthem as a Jewish anthem. That's part of that. That is the core of Zionism, maintaining a Jewish majority. I'm all for relinquishing Zionism altogether, but one state solution is de facto relinquishing Zionism. That's it. And this is something that most Israelis will not even consider to accept. Even if you ask liberal Zionists, at the end of the day, they will say, yeah, we need to maintain a Jewish majority.
That's
I
why
mean,
the canton solution offers a way out, because in Swiss cantons you have official churches. You could privilege in a canton the the Star of David, the Jewish traditions. You could make it a mini.
I agree with you, but Israelis will not. The overwhelming majority will not. It's not even something that you have a small group that you can convince. And again, I want to emphasize, and I've said this before, we're speaking as if we are pre-October 7th and pre-genocide. We are not. This is an entirely different game that we're playing. Nothing will happen. There will be no vision for the future before there will be acknowledgement and recognition of what has happened and what has been done, not only in the past few years with the genocide, but most importantly that. Before that, all of this is a dead end. This
Well,
has to be understood. This is not the same game.
this
Do we
is a
think we could make?
long-term
Do you
idea.
think
I
we could
think
let
we
Liquid
need to have
speak? Actually,
discussion. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're gonna give it over to Liquid.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you.
My name is Ido. Actually, I have lived in Israel most of my life. I was born in Israel, in the city of Haifa, which is one of the largest cities and has a very large Arab Muslim population. And I've studied social psychology in the Reichman University in Herzliya. And there are a few points I'd like to talk about, stuff that I've actually heard in this debate and I didn't even write ahead of time. One of the most important stuff is something that Stephen mentioned. Stephen, you mentioned a very important note that not many, if at all, Palestinians signed up for this debate. It's a very large issue that basically you have no one to speak to on the other side. And as much as we would like there to be peace, there can't be peace without actually debating and talking about the issues that make this entire thing happen. And it's been like that since the start of the war. And I don't know if some of you remember at the beginning of the first hostage deal, they sent a casket with a body of a Palestinian woman inside, and stuff like that just really make you look at it in a different light of like, these people don't want a conversation, these people don't want peace. And another point that I wanted to make is that it's not the Palestinians versus the Israelis. It's never been. It's the terrorists against the Israelis.
Okay, enough. No.
Can I not speak?
Wait.
Sorry.
No, you cannot. You cannot
Come
call
on,
an
let him
entire
talk.
group of population terrorists. No, you will not call an entire group. Listen to me. I will drop from co-host. You will not sit here and call an entire group of people terrorists. But like seriously.
Emrose, please let me run this. I'm very happy to co-host, but we are going to let a diversity of opinion. I do agree with you. We're going to cut it at dehumanizing language, but
it's not what I'm saying.
No, I know. No, Ido, real quick. You didn't say all Palestinians are terrorists. What I understood you to do was you're separating Palestinian civilians with terrorist elements within their society. So I did not take that out.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I also want to express that Ido, the views that you're currently sharing are very much the majority position within Israeli society. And this is something, even if there's
Absolutely.
great disagreement with what you're saying, we need to understand what these views are. And if we disagree, we can challenge them. But I think they're important to hear. So continue.
Okay, thank you. So again, I was not calling an entire population terrorist. That was entirely not my point. There is a very large, very controlling group in the Palestinian and Gazan population that are terrorists, and unfortunately, they have the hand of power. And you said a few stuff about general. You've basically generalized the Israeli population. I've literally studied tons of people, and the general population is not the one that wants this so-called genocide that you're speaking about. It's very much the opposite. And another thing, that there is no apartheid that you've mentioned earlier. Israelis, as David mentioned earlier, sorry, not Palestinians, Muslims live in Israel on an everyday basis. They study. I've studied with quite a few of them when I studied social psychology. They have the right to vote. They have been working in very high fields like lawyers. They've been acting as doctors and nurses in hospitals. And I
Okay,
want to say another
like,
thing. No, I didn't finish. Sorry. I want to say another thing about Zionism. You mentioned the word Zionist a few times. The word Zionist literally means just the right for Israel, the Israeli people, the Jewish people, to have a state in their ancestral land. It means nothing else. And saying that Zionism is some sort of occupational force and opinion is just completely false.
Also,
thank you,
it's
Liquid.
probably a Jewish
just
majority state,
just a
right?
second,
You
Astral,
wanna,
just a second.
Emra,
Liquid, yeah, I
respond?
want to respond real quick. Liquid, I assume you did not figure out any Israelite. I'm Gal Tel Aviv. I'm an Israeli. I live here. I was born and raised here. I raised my daughter here. So I know one or two things. And regarding your statement, I'll start from the beginning that there is no one to talk to on the other side. I've been doing this for almost 2 years. There is a lot of people, more people to talk to about actual peace, equality, liberation on the other side than there is within Israel society. Respectfully, the argument, and I have to emphasize, they are not Muslims, they are not Arabs, they are first and foremost Palestinians, and they are Palestinians with an Israeli passport. You have Moroccan Arabs and Lebanese Arabs and Israeli Arabs. My mom is from Yemen and Iraq. She is an Israeli Jewish Arab. They are Palestinians. The term Arab Israeli was coined especially in order to create an invasion of their identity and create the division between the Palestinians, between the 48, the West Bank, Jerusalem, and Gaza. That's part of the divide and conquer policy. Regarding the apartheid state, I highly recommend, I can send it to you, to read the report by B'Tselem that, or you can even listen to the space that I did with one of their directors, which explains in great detail why there is apartheid on every part between the river and the sea. In some places
B'Tselem
it's
have been
bad.
sued
Some
several
oh, hold
times
on,
for spreading
hold on,
misinformation.
hold on,
Wait.
hold on,
Could let her finish, please.
hold on. There are different grades of oppression. 48, yeah, they might have it better than the West Bank and East Jerusalem and Gaza. Gaza, as now been also determined by the ICJ, has remained under occupation even after the disengagement. According to the ICJ, the West Bank is under occupation and apartheid segregation, including East Jerusalem. There is systemic racism and discrimination within Israel borders, and you know that there are 65 different discriminatory laws that Adala has recognized. I can go on, but Liquid, and I'm saying this from a place of compassion. I was where you are now. I get where you're coming from. But the statement that there is no one to talk to on the other side, the only people who can say that are Palestinians.
I feel like
We
you
are
misunderstood me on that
let
point.
me finish. Let me finish, and then you can say
Okay,
whatever you
go
want.
ahead. Go ahead.
We are the problem, not them. Zionism, the demand for a Jewish majority, an ethnocentric state, as long as you keep a state that its entire construct is aimed at maintaining a demographic majority of a certain group while oppressing and diminishing the others, it doesn't matter if it's Palestinians, Thais, or Italians, you will have a state that oppresses people. And that is bad. But the problem is not the Palestinians. Their issues is for them to fix. First of all, clean up your own house. And our house is so dirty, like
Oh, I'm not saying
really
that
bad
that's
dirty.
true. I agree that our government could be a million times better than
No,
it
no, I'm
is.
talking about the society, not the
No,
government.
let me elaborate. Let me elaborate. I also wrote it down for me. I just today noticed a few quite very strong examples of hate within our own communities. Just Jewish people on Jewish people. It's stupid. I know, but it's. I'll emphasize what I said earlier, that there is no one to talk to on the other side. There is no one to talk to on the other side in a position of power. There isn't anyone to talk to inside Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization. Israel hasn't been taken. Israel and the IDF hasn't
Liquid,
been.
who kept Hamas in power for the past 17 years? No, no, no.
Wait.
This is a
No,
point that
I
people
let
from
you
the
finish. I let
outside.
you finish.
Wait,
Wait,
I let you
yeah,
finish.
but
You finish.
Emrose, yeah, I'd like to have a clean back and forth just so it stays, manageable to listen to for the viewers and that everyone can really get their point across. So,
Thank you.
yeah, Liquid, all you.
So again, the IDF hasn't been inside of Gaza on a consistent basis since 2005, and there isn't anyone to talk to inside of Hamas, the head that controls Gaza and all its population, that actually wants peace with Israel. There isn't. It's a terrorist organization, it's a governmental force, and there isn't anyone that in the head of Hamas that actually wants peace with Israel. And until there is a governmental force inside of Gaza that actually wants peace with Israel, we can't have any negotiations that actually lead to peace.
okay. So first of all, let's start with the fact that you know just as well as I do who has kept Hamas in power for the past 17 years, and that was the Israeli regime. Respectfully, like nobody in Israel, just most of the people in Israel do not dispute that. Now that is not a coincidence. Remember, Hamas is an asset, the PA is a liability. These are statements made by Prime Minister and by Smotrich and by other factors within Israel government. It's not a coincidence that they lack leadership, that they lack unity. This is intentional. Divide and conquer. Israel has kept Hamas in power despite multiple efforts by the PA, even before the disengagement, where the PA told Ariel Sharon, if you do this unilaterally, we will have a problem. There will be a shit show in there, which is exactly what happened. In 2014, when the PA tried to strangle Hamas financially, Bibi was the one who bailed him out. In 2018, Bibi was the one who went to Qatar and asked money. We know this because the former head of the Mossad sat in front of Ilana Dayan, one of the leading investigative journalists in Israel, and told her exactly how he called Qatar and transferred cash in suitcases to Hamas. When the PA tried to have elections, they couldn't. Why? Because Israel would not allow them to conduct the elections in East Jerusalem, which effectively, according to the laws of the UN, which helps fund the PLO, would make those elections invalid. So Israel is the one who impaired the ability of the PA to hold proper democratic elections. I can go on, but this notion of there's no one to talk to on the other side, Israel is the one who passed the legislation against 6 months ago against ever establishing a Palestinian state. Israel is the one who has kept Hamas in power. Hamas is an asset, the PA is a liability. This entire construct has nothing to do with them. The idea that there was not a single soldier within Gaza, I'm sorry, but neither you nor I know better than the highest legal authority on earth, which is the ICJ in this specific case, which clearly stated in its advisory opinion Gaza remained after occupation, even after disengagement, for various numerous reasons, which I will not go into right now. You're welcome to read the report, or I have a screenshot of the specific part of the opinion if you want. But everything you stated thus far is either incorrect or biased, and I'm trying to be very respectful. and it's dehumanizing. Hamas, as much as it is also a branch of a terror organization, it is also a governing power. Everybody that works from collecting to trash to administrative is labeled Hamas by Israel and therefore eligible for assassinations. We have right now in our government two people who are effective terrorists. We have terrorist activity by Jews on Palestinians on an almost day-to-day basis in the West Bank. There is a genocide in Gaza. And you want to talk to me about the branch, the military terroristic branch of Hamas, which Israel kept in power for 17 years? Do you understand how preposterous that sounds? We are the
I'll say
problem,
something
not
that
them.
I do agree with you to a certain extent that I totally hate Bibi, Smotrich, Ben Gvir, Deri, all of those people that are currently in power in Israel. I definitely agree that they should all be in prison. But even though what you're saying may be even partially true, let's take for a second. Maybe you're 100% correct. Okay, maybe Bibi has
Nothing I
secret
said is an
conversations.
opinion. Nothing I said is an opinion. Everything I said it is fact.
1 second. Let's say that even for a minute, maybe you're 100% correct. Bibi had secret conversations with Hamas and put them in power. Okay, it doesn't matter what happened in the past. It matters what's happening right now. Right now, you have a governmental terrorist force as the governing agency in Gaza that has
And in
nothing.
Israel?
Okay, and wants nothing to do with peace. Okay, at this point, we can't have even one word, one conversation on peace. It's a matter of replacing both governmental bodies.
Well, it's very difficult to have conversations with people you keep assassinating. You see, that's a problem. When you assassinate the entire.
I seriously just said replace both governmental bodies. Listen to my words, okay? Replace both.
How do you, okay, so then how do you expect the Palestinians to replace their government? Are they given the option to do that? No, because as I just said,
because it's a dictatorship. Exactly. It's a dictatorship.
But Israel is the one keeping them in power. Within Gaza, Israel is the one who kept Hamas in power. And when it comes to the West Bank, Israel is the one who keeps hampering the PA, including denying its ability to conduct proper elections.
If I may, Ido, I'd like to just break it down in a slightly different way, because we're in agreement that Hamas is not the optimal partner for peace. But the question that we need to ask ourselves is, how can we create conditions on the ground where a partner for peace arises? So, and we have this notion in Israeli society, and it's a convenient and a very disempowering notion that Hamas, no matter what, will never accept any form of Israel, and they will forever want to rid the land of Jews, and it's in their DNA. It is unchangeable. But there's no reason to believe that to be true, because there's never been an organization in the history of the world that hasn't changed. You change conditions, you change incentives, you change the way people view things. Hamas are humans.
I definitely agree.
Right. So, but let's look what we did. Right. We had a situation where the PA is a relatively moderate government who recognized Israel's right to exist in 1993 and has had security cooperation with Israel for decades now. We rewarded the
Most
PA.
of the issue is not with the PA.
Oh, no, I know, but this is very relevant. The way we rewarded the PA for their moderate stance, for their cooperation with us, was settlement expansion, more theft of land, and in a more oppressive system in the West Bank. When Hamas attacked us in Gaza, we did a unilateral withdrawal. So what we told the Palestinian people is, if you cooperate with us, we will take more land. And if you attack us, then we'll withdraw. We did the exact opposite. We didn't reward the moderates. We didn't show that there's, through negotiation, you get liberty or equality. We said through cooperation, we're going to continue to oppress you. So imagine a situation where the past 20 years, we worked with the PA to strengthen them, to create an amazing situation in the West Bank where Palestinians are sovereign there. That's the best way to weaken Hamas and to put pressure on them to change. In addition to that, few people know this. When they got elected, they actually reached out to Israel to negotiate a 10-year truce. Some of their leaders said we could even expand it to a 50-year truce. And the terms of the truce weren't, we could say they weren't the most favorable for Israel, but that's what a negotiation is for. But we didn't sit and try to negotiate a truce and then build on that truce and expand it. We outright rejected it. And then we put Gaza under a brutal blockade, not just a blockade to stop weapons from coming in, but from all sorts of vital goods from coming in. And we stopped 100% of exports. We destroyed their economy. And then we maintained that as the status quo. So when you don't reward cooperation, and when you don't give people a peaceful means to achieve their goals, violence is what's going to ensue. So it's not an easy task getting a population who we've taken so much from them, who we've oppressed for so long, to just accept us. It requires a lot of work, and we have not really done the work. So that what I'm calling for is what I'm calling for.
Okay, really quick. I just have a meta thing to say.
I'll just say, Adal, just a second. Adal, סדר הידיים, זוהר, דיוויד, ואז ג'ורג', ואז מייקל.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Cool.
I'll just say one thing.
Ido, I just want to one more sentence. So all I'm calling for, it's so easy for us to sit around and blame Palestinians for us not having peace, and that's also disempowering. It says there's nothing we could do. It's all in their hands. I want us to.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what
I'm not. Ido, I'm not just speaking to you. I'm speaking to you and to the public. I want Israelis to really be introspective and take responsibility for the situation we're in and do everything in our power to solve this. And it is within our power, but step one is recognizing that and then working towards achieving that. And Ido, I'll give it to you, and then we'll start moving it along. Although we
I DM'd you the order of speakers.
Okay, thank you, Rose. Yeah, so Ido, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's why earlier I mentioned, let's say even, let's say that what you're saying is 100% true, because I'm not saying you're completely full of bullshit, of course. It's a much more complicated task, especially on the Israeli side. But you have to consider that basically the Israeli government is oppressing its own citizen in some aspects, and even though you have been oppressed for so long and in so many aspects, it doesn't give you the right to break into a country and kill its own innocent civilians unprovoked.
Did you hear anybody justify that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody here is. Well, I can't speak for everyone here, but I'm definitely not.
But then you say that but then you say, Amos, that Israel is the Nazis in this case.
Look, the Holocaust doesn't justify the Nakba. The occupation,
I'm not saying it was.
the
I'm not
occupation.
saying
Just
it
let me
is.
finish. The occupation, no, the occupation just doesn't justify 710, and the 710 doesn't justify the genocide. And we really need to go to hands. So let's start with Zohar, and then we can continue.
Thank you. So it seems that we have a little bit of a debate on who's at fault and who started first. Liquid, yeah. Liquid. Are you okay with the expansion of illegal settlements in the West Bank and the uprooting of villages?
No, I'm
Okay.
completely against it.
I understand. Do you think right now, when it comes to negotiations about Israeli hostages, the Israeli government and Hamas are both to blame for the breakdown negotiations?
Yes, definitely.
You don't think that Benjamin Netanyahu has an incentive to prolong the war and not to bring back the hostages?
Oh no, I meant that I think that Israel has definitely a side in this. It's that they definitely prolonged it.
So?
That's what he asked.
And sorry, I was asking, you don't think that assassinating the negotiation team in Qatar today might have stifled the negotiation a bit further?
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that. No, no, because again, the I'm trying to come up with the right words. The negotiations.
I'm trying to hear them. Yes.
Yeah. Again, I'll say that negotiations on the Palestinian side, I'll say the Hamas side. The Hamas side hasn't really been negotiations, especially for the fact that you don't know really what's going on the ground over there. I remember I drove just before the just a few days before the first hostage negotiation and the ceasefire. I remember I drove on Ayalon, the main road in Israel going through Tel Aviv. There's a giant sign that counted down the amount of hostages left in Gaza. And I remember it was 99. And just a day later, maybe 2 days later, there was the hostage deal, and I read about 66 hostages remaining there. And I was like, literally, specifically, a third is gone. What happened to them? You can't negotiate.
Liquid, I appreciate the anecdote. I'm just asking again. This is the quite widespread opinion among the Israeli public that the Netanyahu and his more far-right partners of the cabinet, including Ben Gvir and Smotrich, blocked negotiations several times to
Zohar, we can't hear you. זוהר, אהובי, בקושי שומעים אותך.
נשמע כאילו אתה עובד במפעל.
Alright, there's a tram passing by. Again, I'm going to ask again because it's a quite widespread opinion among the Israeli public that both Ben Gvir and Smotrich they admitted that single-handedly they blocked the negotiation deal, and they are not interested in any kind of deal that will bring back the hostages and stop the war. Are you sure that you're not proving of this opinion that just the majority of the Israeli liberals have?
I'm not saying. I'm gonna sound radical for a second. It's gonna sound radical. I promise I'm not. It's just I am quite convinced there are no hostages left. I am convinced there are none alive right now, and Hamas is the only one prolonging this sort of negotiation. It's not really a negotiation because they can't provide anything. You have to realize you had literally civilians. Hamas called out for civilians to break into Israel and kidnap Israeli civilians themselves.
I remember what happened 2 years ago. I'm asking you what's happening now.
You had hostages kept inside private apartments in Gaza.
Liquid, do you know, enough. Adal, I'm sorry, there's Liquid.
Well, no, I'll real quick. So far, Liquid hasn't done anything that I would say is a violation of the undefined guidelines here. But as long as it's not personal attacks or dehumanizing rhetoric, then we're gonna let it go. But I'm glad you stopped it because I'm in a little bit of a challenging situation because this open dialogue was initially meant to be a private chat. What I decided that I was going to do is that half of it was going to be on Twitter Spaces, and then at 8:15, which was 6 minutes ago, I was going to move it over to Discord for a private conversation. Now, I'm happy to keep this open and I'm going to hop off and go facilitate the Discord conversation if you all want to stay here. But Emrose, you also said you need to hop off at some point, correct?
I can stay a little longer, but I run a tight ship.
Maybe what we'll do is we'll just wrap this one up and then we'll move it over to Discord because that's the commitment I gave the people, and I really want to stand by that. I think what we'll do next week is we're not going to do a hybrid model, or at the very least we'll let the space run longer because I think there's good conversation here, and I feel a little bit bad cutting it off, but I did make a commitment that half of it will be in private. So yeah, so we're just going to wrap it up. We're going to wrap this up here. the next step. And Emrose, you and I'll message you. We'll talk about doing more stuff
Yeah,
together.
we'll talk and we'll do proper preparation.
Okay, awesome. I go to Tel Aviv once or so a week to the protest, so maybe we could find a time to meet up. So I'll be in touch with you about that also.
Okay. Sure. Happy to help.
Awesome. Thanks for hopping on. So everybody here, if you go to my bio, you'll see there's join the community. You'll see there's a link to Discord. If you're unfamiliar with Discord, you might hate it at first, but it's a really good community management app. Once you join, you'll see it says the stage. Just click on the stage, and then you'll be connected to a voice channel just like this. But it's not going to be published to the world. It's just going to be more of a private conversation, and we're going to continue there. And stay tuned because we're going to do this on a weekly basis. So thank you all for joining. And with that, I am going to wrap this up. If anybody has, I'll leave 60 seconds if anybody has a question about the next step of this conversation. And if not, then I'm going to wrap it. Anyone's free to speak. Just chime in if you have a question before we wrap.
What day do you usually do this stuff?
I think we're going to do it every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Jerusalem time, which would be 12 p.m. Eastern time.
Okay.
It's okay to join the other conversation, just listening, right?
Yeah. You don't need to speak. You could listen in. Whoever here is just listening. Again, you don't need to speak. You don't need to show your face.
Yeah.
But it's a more.
I don't have time to speak anymore. I just would want to listen.
No, yeah, but Idad, I'd be happy for you to join the community. I think you'll have some interest.
I am already there. I joined earlier.
Oh, okay, cool, awesome.
Yeah, how do we log into the Discord right now? I'm a little confused how it works. I tried clicking on the thing you said, the join the community.
Yeah, and then
but I'm the one with the URL that says RZWW.
Yeah, exactly. Click that link.
Okay, I clicked it, and then
you might need to create an account, but then you'll see it says the stage, and you click on the stage, and then you'll be connected you'll be connected to a little conversation.
The stage. I'm looking for it. Is it at the left? On the top?
Yeah, top left, exactly. You'll see a lot of tabs on the top left, but that will be one of them.
Okay, let me see if I can find it. All right, thank you.
Yep, for sure. If not, just DM me. You could DM me. All right, guys, I'm going to close this. I'll see you all on Discord. Thank you for joining. Next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Jerusalem time, we'll be back.
Okay, peace. Thank you.
Cool. I think we wrapped it. Yep, it's ended. Cool. Awesome. Discord. Those still here on YouTube. I'm gonna wrap this up as well because we promised a private conversation. But I'll drop the link for you guys as well if anybody wants to join. And yeah, if not, I'll see y'all soon. Thank you so much.